Was Josh Pate just stirring the pot, or was he on to something with Lincoln Riley?
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. USC and Alabama, who's on a bigger upset alert this week? And far be it from me to forget to remind you, the college football public, that a group of 5 teams making the playoff. Where does that race stand after the first playoff rankings? That's all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So, Josh Pate was on a show, and as he was leaving, just decided to throw a little bombshell suggestion. Just a suggestion. He said, keep an eye on Lincoln Riley at USC. You've got the Florida job open. You have got the the LSU job open, and you have Lincoln Riley at USC. There has not been a contract extension announced. Now, that is read the tea leaves, probably a little too hard, indicator number one for fans to want to put a coach onto the proverbial, not hot seat, but could move from their current job seat. That's a good starting point for a lot of folks. And sometimes I think that's really fair. With Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, hey, his name is so hot on the coaching carousel right now and has been tied so many times to these jobs. Yeah, I do wonder why Matt Rule got extended at Nebraska, Kurt Cignetti at Indiana, Dan Lanning shut down the rumors, or they didn't really get that far, but shut down any idea that he would leave Oregon. And yet, it's all been quiet over it. So if you want to go in the direction of no action means there's action happening behind the scenes, all right, you're entitled to do that. If you want to go even further down the conspiratorial rabbit hole, you could realize that Lincoln Riley was once upon a time tied to the LSU job. Do you remember 2021? Lincoln Riley had to make a statement while the head coach at Oklahoma that he will not be the next head football coach at LSU. Fast forward, he is not. But he's not at Oklahoma. And if he had to shut down the idea that that was going to happen, I think it's fair to say that at least contact has been made or something moved along those lines. Lincoln Riley's agent is a former Florida Gator. Does that factor into the equation? I don't know. Here's what I do know, and why I don't think it's as ridiculous as it initially sounds to suggest that Lincoln Riley could leave USC, because this has actually been brought up on this show before. Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators on this very program said, yeah, maybe the administration would look in Lincoln Riley's direction. And that wasn't a name that was really on my radar for any of these jobs. And the reason that it hasn't been is because Lincoln Riley is doing a good job now at USC. Year one was a success. They went 11-1, lost the Pac-12 title game. Yeah, they wound up going 11-3. Okay, that was a successful first year. Years 2 and 3 were not successful. They had glimpses, they had flashes of potential. They were not, on the whole, successful seasons. But now, for Lincoln Riley, he's got a team that currently controls its own destiny to make the college football playoff, and we are in November. I'll talk about their game against Northwestern later on today's show. So the progress has been there. Now, the interesting thing about this is I get the sense that the relationship between USC fans, maybe some media folks as well for whatever that's worth, and Lincoln Riley has been touch and go. I don't think it's been a complete disaster. I definitely don't think it has been perfect, given that the program has underachieved for the last couple of seasons. They are on track to finish with the exact record I predicted them to have before this year. So I wouldn't be someone, if I were a USC fan, if I had that expectation, which I did, would come on at the end of the year and say, nope, didn't go past 9-3, not in the playoff. Nope, this is not good enough. He's got to go, all that sort of stuff. Like, there have been times where USC fans have wanted Lincoln Riley to go. He's still there, and he's doing a good job. Now, the question you have to ask yourself if you're Lincoln Riley is, what does LSU or Florida, which I think are the only jobs he would leave USC for, because USC is a premier job in college football, given the recruiting landscape and the history of that program and the amount of money that they have given him, that I think they pour into that program, and they've gotten their NIL in order, and they brought the GM over from Notre Dame. That's gone really well. What would you have at LSU or Florida that you don't have at USC? This is not me suggesting that USC's way off of those jobs. It's not me suggesting that Lincoln Riley views LSU or Florida in a radically different way. It's just something that he has to be able to answer if he were going to be interested in that. But my reaction when I saw the clip from Josh Pate going around saying, "Are we sure about Lincoln Riley?" I thought, well, it's not the craziest notion. I wouldn't put a 0% chance on it if you really asked me. But if I were Lincoln Riley in the position he's got right now, with them trending up and looking like they are going to keep getting things right, the offense is having a bounce back year, they've once again reestablished how to run the football, the defense with Danton Lane, defensive coordinator, is really good. Do you want to get rid of what you have built and go back to some level of ground zero? Yes, LSU and Florida in the age of the transfer portal are jobs that you could go to and have some immediate success. There is still an element. Kalen DeBoer at Alabama is a perfect example of this. The Crimson Tide have still not lost an SEC game. They might not the rest of the season until perhaps the SEC championship game. Or maybe even they don't lose one there. It took until year 2. So for Lincoln Riley, when you had that initial surge in year 1, and then you took 2 steps back, and now you're taking another step forward, that first year, I don't think you would go and just immediately make it all work. It's really, really hard to do. And some people might say, well, Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Yeah, Curt Cignetti looks like one of one. And I think most coaches, even really good ones, should stop being compared to Curt Cignetti. He might be the best coach in college football. Might. He's in that conversation. So if your standard is we either have the best coach in college football or we don't have a good one, then sure, you're going to be pretty unhappy most of the time with somebody like Lincoln Riley at the helm. But if Lincoln Riley were to actually make that consideration, and I have not been told or heard anything along the lines of that being the case, if he were to consider it, that's what I think he would have to weigh. Is the futuristic upside of those 2 jobs so much greater than what I have here at USC that I am willing to throw out what I've built and at some level do a little bit of a reset? Oh, by the way, his buyout is not cheap, but there's a lot of money that gets thrown around in college sports, so perhaps someone would be willing to pay it. A couple other coaching thoughts to wrap this show. There are reports that Paul Chryst could be the next head coach at Oregon State, or that he's at least a candidate to be the next head coach at Oregon State. I'd be here for it. Was not a guy at Wisconsin that was failing dreadfully. He did not have the program as far down as Luke Fickell has it right now. I understood why they made the change. I was a little surprised. Chryst has a history at Oregon State. I could see it. Another thing, and I want you to ponder this very seriously. James Franklin is still out there, and I expect these coaching searches will go on, but we're into November now. That transfer portal window starts in January, and it only runs for one window in January. Someone like James Franklin is going to be hired before that happens. You have a lot to do when you get hired to a program. And I said on the show earlier this week, and I have still heard, that there is a potential for him to go to Virginia Tech, that interest has at least been mildly expressed in one direction. But Franklin, by not letting those rumors get super serious, there's not a huge story, is he trying to hold out for any of the LSU, Florida, or even Auburn jobs? And I've said on this show, if I were any of those programs, Auburn would be the most likely. I don't think that's the right move. Arkansas, maybe. But Virginia Tech, to me, feels like a really good landing spot for James Franklin. But if I were LSU or Florida and I was forced down because Lane Kiffin has turned us down to either James Franklin or Lincoln Riley, I would take Lincoln Riley. I absolutely would. So just keep an eye as the coaching carousel continues to roll along. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter at @LockedOn_CFB and all of that good stuff. So, speaking of USC, do they have any sort of upset alert this week? Anything at all? What about Alabama? First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next day delivery. You talk about a game changer? Next day delivery, that is as game changer as it gets. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Seriously, next day shipping. Is there anything better than that? I don't know. I know I love it for everything I order, and you'll love it because Supply House has it for you. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Speaking of USC, they play a game on Friday night at home against Northwestern, who is at least a little bit better than we thought they would be before the season. Now, when they brought in Preston Stone in the offseason, I did wonder if that was going to lead to some level of success. Turns out it has. I didn't talk about Northwestern a bunch in the offseason on the show. You know why? Because at a place like that, in the modern age of college football, it's a little bit like Stanford, which is now in the ACC for some reason. Neither of these places are Notre Dame, even though I'm sure they'd love to be at some level one day. They are not there. They are elite academic institutions, and they are not committed to football the same way everybody else is. Still, David Braun, one-time Big Ten Coach of the Year a couple of seasons ago, is a good football coach. Former defense coordinator at North Dakota State. That side of the ball, very well coached. I've seen that all season when I watched them play Oregon earlier this year. The Ducks won the game comfortably because they just have a lot more talent. But Northwestern, they are fast and they are physical on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe more physical than fast, but I think they have enough speed on that side of the ball. Here's the thing. They're underdogs of just over 2 touchdowns, according to our friends at FanDuel at USC on Friday night. We have seen bigger point spread underdogs win a game outright this year. Whether you're talking about Northwestern going across to Penn State and winning on the road, UCLA also beating Penn State. All right, that's just against Penn State. But this isn't out of the realm of possibility if USC doesn't bring, I don't know if they need their A game, but they need their B- game. If USC shows up with a C-, D+ effort, yeah, Northwestern could get you. They absolutely could. So the teams that have beaten USC this year, Illinois by 3 points, that game was on the road. And, of course, Notre Dame, another matchup that was on the road. And USC's run defense, much improved this year from a season ago. They still have a ways to go. That is, indeed, I have said this a lot in the last week here on this show. That is the most important element of this game. Northwestern runs for 188 yards per game as a team. And when you are going into this game, David Braun, as I said, good football coach. You ever hear the word game plan get thrown around? And it's kind of one of those buzzwords that people just talk about or they just mention, they just say. Do you ever actually think about what game plan means when coaches say, yeah, I liked our plan? Or, I didn't like our plan in that game. I didn't think our plan was very good. Okay, the big picture game plan for a football game, week to week, doesn't always change for a football coach. It often doesn't, because they usually have a philosophy, a way in which they want their team to play, how they want their game to look. When David Braun goes into this game, I can almost guarantee you he will approach it the way he approached the Oregon game, the Penn State game, when he's going into it with the second most talented team on the field. He is not a fool. He knows that's the case. He's not going to try and throw the ball 30 to 40 times. Preston Stone this year has had his moments, but Preston Stone has also thrown 9 interceptions and is under 200 yards passing per game. That needs to be a complementary component, but for Northwestern, I think you are going to see them come out with a very distinct game plan on the offensive side of the ball, and that is to kill the clock and let your offense help your defense. That's what Northwestern has to do in this game. If they're going to at least keep it close or pull what would be pretty shocking upset in my view, but not unprecedented. They are going to have to be able to run the ball, kill the clock. I think you'll see them early in the game wind down the play clock as much as they possibly can. They want to snap the ball even in the first quarter. You typically think of this as something that could happen in the third or mostly in the fourth quarter when you're trying to run clock down. You are going to see Northwestern, I believe in this game, run the play clock to 10 seconds or lower every chance they get. Because they know they can't get into a track meet. They want as few plays run between both offenses as possible. That's their formula for success. Run the ball, kill the clock, limit the possessions, and keep the point total. I think it's got to be under 60. If Northwestern is winning, if one team gets to 30, it's not going to be Northwestern, because I do think USC's defense is solid and could easily force a turnover or two in this game. If the total number of points scored, let me pull up the point total according to our friends at FanDuel. If that starts to creep up and up, the total is 50.5. If that goes over, then USC's winning the game. They're doing so comfortably. They're favored by 14.5 points. I don't know if they cover that number because I think Northwestern can execute this plan, but it'll come down to how well they can run the ball. Another key for USC in this spot, and I'm not yet making my score pick. I do believe USC will win the game and ultimately be fine, but they've got to get off the field on third down, because what I just talked about comes down to third down execution. If the Wildcats want to use as much clock as possible, I don't think against this Trojans defense, Northwestern is going to be in a lot of 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3. I think they're going to have plenty of 2nd and 6 and 2nd and 7, but then a short run gives you 3rd and medium or short, or an incomplete pass gives you 3rd and medium or long. Those are the plays that Northwestern has to be able to string together to sustain drives. So I think USC will be just fine, but this is a really fascinating matchup because USC's offense, I think, can score in the Northwestern defense, which is good, but USC's offense also quite good, and USC is at home. We've seen USC struggle on one side of the ball. It was offense in Nebraska, defense at Illinois, defense and a little bit of offense situationally, mostly at Notre Dame earlier this year. That was all on the road. At home, they've been a pretty good team. I think this could look and feel like a lower scoring version of USC's win over Michigan State. I believe the final score in that one was 45-31. And I also believe that was a 14.5 point spread, and Michigan State covered late with a backdoor cover. So that's a quick outlook at that game. I don't think there's a major upset alert there. Here's one I wonder about. Alabama is off a bye playing LSU, which of course now has an interim head coach, seeing as their former head coach didn't get the job done. This is the week, as I talked about yesterday on the show, of interim head coaches to try and make some noise. DJ Durkin at Auburn. Can they go to Vanderbilt and win? I think they absolutely could. Because Auburn is not an untalented team. Auburn just wasn't properly coached. So now you get a different coach in there. Well, that same logic can easily apply to LSU. When you get a different head coach in there, when you remove the offensive coordinator, who is clearly an issue given the talent of this LSU offense and how they performed this year, they couldn't run the ball successfully. They just weren't very productive overall. Does that change with the interim head coach? We saw this with UCLA. Tim Skipper might be the next head coach of UCLA. He might not. But since he took over, they're a much different football team. Even though they have a backup quarterback, it's still crazy to think that UCLA is favored against Nebraska. Because Nebraska is a much better team that had much higher hopes coming into this year. But why is UCLA favored? Because things have changed once there was an interim head coach. Even if he knows I'm not long for the road, sometimes those things can get weird. Alabama's run defense hasn't been great this year. LSU's rushing offense has been worse. So if the Tigers can figure that out and support Garrett Nussmeier a little, I'd be far less surprised at LSU upsetting Alabama than I would Northwestern upsetting USC. And FanDuel agrees with my thinking, by the way, because USC's favored by 14.5, Alabama's favored by 9.5 going into this spot. But for a team that's playing an unranked opponent with an interim head coach, under 10 points, kind of a small number, especially at home, don't you think? Doesn't that seem just a little bit curious? The total in the game's 49.5. 49.5, that is a reflection of what kind of exists with Auburn. It's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of coaching. What happens when you change the coaching? We don't know. We don't know. But we are certainly going to find out. So I think those games against interim head coaches in the SEC are really interesting. And just keep an eye. They might both win. I'd be willing to bet that at least one of Auburn or LSU make things really uncomfortable for teams that have eyes on the college football playoff. Vanderbilt needs to win more than Alabama for their playoff hopes, but Bama certainly doesn't want to throw a wrench into their plans and introduce a second loss, because remember they lost to Florida State. Yes, this is that same college football season. Boy, we've gotten here in the blink of an eye, haven't we? So keep an eye on those things. I'm not extremely worried about either. I'd be more concerned about Alabama than I would USC. Far be it from me to forget to inform you, the college football public, a Group of 5 team is getting into the playoff. We learned something very clear, and nothing is actually clear on the Group of 5 playoff hunt. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And you can make college football even more exciting. It's the greatest sport on planet Earth, as I say every day here on the show. How can it get even more thrilling for you? FanDuel.com. That's the place to go. You have got point spreads, money line, prop bets, futures bets, Heisman bets. Those odds are fun to follow throughout the year because guys go into the top and then they fall and then they come back up. What is the status of Arch Manning's Heisman campaign? If you want to find out, you go to FanDuel.com. You check them out and you get a bunch of information in addition to an opportunity to spice things up every weekend. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, not a single Group of 5 team into the college football playoffs first top 25 this year. Not a single one. That, of course, cannot continue to be the case. It will not continue to be the case. If you believe that the Group of 5 automatically getting a team into the playoff is silly, I don't know that I can push back in a significant way on that argument. I am not opposed to the Group of 5 having access to the playoff. I mean, they made the 4-team playoff with Cincinnati once upon a time when they were still a member of the American. Cincinnati, another team. They're not ranked after a blowout loss to Utah on the road. I mean, sure, drop them, punish it, but out of the top 25, that was a little curious. But if you want to make the argument they should be 25 over Tennessee, that's fine. I don't think it's that impactful at the end of the day. But I think it's a fair argument to make. But if you don't think the Group of 5 should get a team into the playoff, I think that's entirely fair. Because right now, in the first iteration, none of them are ranked. That's going to change. That is going to change. It has to change by rule. And the more I talk about it and think about it, the more I think, I don't know. I don't know if them automatically getting one in because you have a rule about the 5 highest ranked conference champions. I don't know if that is the best thing for the sport and the way to get the most deserving teams into the playoff, the ones who have earned it the most. But there are 2 games to keep an eye on this week as this race really heats up. I want to start with Memphis and Tulane. So Tulane was in control and of their own destiny to the playoff. They had 2 Power 4 wins, which were holding up very well over time. I had Tulane ranked until they went to San Antonio last week and they couldn't stop a nosebleed. 48-26. They lose to the Roadrunners. Meet. Jeff Traylor, good football coach. Man, he just doesn't really lose at home in that spot. But Tulane, I don't think is out of the playoff picture because they're not out of the American Conference Championship picture. They have to win this particular game. They're on the road against Memphis, and it's a game on Friday night that is going to have huge. I think it's very possible that the winner of this game winds up in the top 25 for the playoff committee rankings next week. And once you are in the lead, someone has to come and knock you off. And I don't know who that team readily is. There are some options. I get it. But what Tulane has in their back pocket and what what Memphis has in their back pocket is a win over Arkansas. Now, is Arkansas a good team? No. No, they are not. However, they also have a win over South Florida due to the Memphis Tigers. Their loss to UAB, inexplicable. Memphis would be in my top 25 and probably the playoff top 25 if they hadn't lost to. Wait for it. Let me just go back to the theme of this week here in Locked On College Football. They lost to an interim head coach after Trent Dilfer got fired. What do you know? Anyway, returning to the conversation. Tulane is 6-2. Their one loss to a Power 4 team is Ole Miss. They were beaten soundly in that game. But they have 2 Power 4 wins. They beat Duke in the Darian Mensah Bowl, and they beat Northwestern 23-3. Those are both Power 4 bowl teams. And that is a card that's an Uno reverse card that no one else in the group of 5 can really play at this moment. That's what it comes down to in these group of 5 playoff debates. What are your Power 4 wins, if any? So this game is going to be awesome. It is on Friday night. It is at Memphis. Brendan Lewis, yes, that Brendan Lewis has been the Memphis quarterback. Ryan Silverfield, his name is wildly under-discussed in these coaching circles. I won't be shocked whatsoever if when the coaching carousel settles down, Ryan Silverfield is a Power 4 head coach. He's been really good with this Tigers program for the last several years. And I think people are continuing to take at least a little notice. He doesn't have as high of a profile as John Sumrall. Why? Back alley dealings with agents, I guess. Having the right job to win. I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a good answer for that. I think John Sumrall is great. I've talked about him a lot as a candidate for big-time jobs. I think that's totally fair. Tell me why Ryan Silverfield shouldn't also be in that conversation. Go look at his resume. Google him. Do the Kurt Signetti. So, in this spot, Memphis favored by 4.5 points against Tulane. But the Tigers here have got to find a way, I think, to contain Jake Retzloff's legs. Boy, that was a mouthful to get out, and yet we were able to make it work. So, when Retzloff went to Tulane, I thought it was a great fit, because I had a guy that was a proven winner at the quarterback position at BYU a season ago, led the Cougars to an 11-win campaign. Turns out Kalani Sitake, very good head football coach, by the way, and just keeps winning even though he isn't there. Retzloff has to be able to protect the ball. I think whichever team does that key better, their respective key better, probably winds up winning the football game. Retzloff throwing the ball this year has been capable, but boy, he got benched in that UTSA game. Not because he got hurt, but because he just kept turning the football over. So that definitely cannot happen. I don't have a pick on this game yet. I just wanted to get it on your radar. But all the picks for my games will be on my show on Friday, as always. So keep an eye on that game. Memphis comes in with 1 loss on the year, 8-1. Tulane is at 6-2. And the Green Wave in the American Conference and in the broad picture Group 5 playoff standings would get a big resume boost if they were able to win this game. Memphis's best win is South Florida. Tulane's best win, probably it's Duke or Northwestern, one of the two. Another one to keep an eye on in the Group of 5 this week is San Diego State, who missed an opportunity to win at Washington State earlier this year, but they also, it's only one win, it's what sets Tulane apart. They've got a 34-0 win against Cal. For whatever that is worth, it's something. It's something, and the Aztecs, I talked about their defense earlier this week. They've won 6 in a row. In those games, here are the number of points that they have allowed. 0, 3, 24, 10, 0, and 7. No one is scoring on them. They're in Honolulu this week. Hawaii's going to a bowl game. 6-win team. They love to throw the football. The Rainbow Warriors, I know you haven't thought about Hawaii very much as a program. That's because they haven't been incredibly relevant since just before the COVID season back in 2020. That was, I believe, the last time they went to the Mountain West Championship game. But they have a chance to spoil San Diego State. And look, there are not that many opportunities. I think the American is stronger than the Mountain West this year. I think that San Diego State at 11-1 That would mean they win their final 4 games. Hawaii on the road, Boise State, San Jose State, at New Mexico. It's a tough stretch in the Mountain West. Make no mistake about it. If they are able to pull that off and they go 11-1 and then they win the Mountain West championship game, no matter who would be against, they could be in a resume battle with a team from the American. I think they could easily lose it. I do. And it would be wild if they go 12-1, and that's an if. That is an if. Because in the Mountain West, that schedule there is not a cakewalk. It really isn't. But if they were to go 12-1, they could get beat out by a 12-2 Tulane, or a 12-1 Memphis would have an advantage over them. So that's a game to keep an eye on, because as I always say, help is often given to those in college football that hold their own. That's all San Diego State can do. I don't think there are any chances on the schedule for them to leapfrog anybody in the eyes of the committee. I think the winner of Tulane or Memphis probably finds themselves inside the top 25. All San Diego State can do is hope that everybody loses as much as possible, and they're the last team standing at the group of 5 level. So there is your weekly G5 check-in. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.